Well, guys, I don't normally film on my cell phone like a little selfie, but I was doing some quiet work this morning before I head into a boot camp, and I couldn't concentrate because I kept thinking about this video that I needed to make for our YouTube channel. And so I finally just decided to stop what I was doing and make this video so I can get on with my day. I share this nugget of wisdom quite frequently the last few months, and I am often surprised at people's response of not knowing this. And I don't know why people don't know it. I think it might be related to, when you're starting with a new bank, there's so much information that comes your way that this would probably be likely to be filed away as something that maybe isn't really important right now. So what we're going to talk about is turn times and the 12 o'clock noon rule. Okay, so a turn time, in case you're unfamiliar, this is how we talk in the industry, but a turn time is from the day something is submitted to the day that it is processed by an underwriter and returned back to you as a loan officer or as a processor. Okay, so if I submit a file or I submit conditions on Monday, and the bank is saying, hey, we have 4-day turn times on conditions, that means that I'm not getting the file back until Thursday or Friday. But in order to count this properly, you have to know when the turn time day starts. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're also going to talk about a misconception that people have with how processors are operating. And if this is how you're operating, I'm going to ask you one thing, and it's to pivot. And I'm an old basketball player. Yes, all 5'3" of me was an old basketball player. And so if you're an athlete, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're not an athlete or not a basketball player, pivot means when you stand on one foot, so you're still stationary, you're still where you are, and you change directions, okay? So first, let's talk about what the noon rule is, okay? So noon rule is how this documents and turn times are measured, okay? So if I'm submitting a document or I'm submitting a file or I'm submitting conditions, in order for it to be counted as today, and today is my start day, today is number 1, I have to have my documents submitted by 12 noon. Now, normally this is 12 Eastern time. Yeah, I know. For those of us in Mountain and West, that's a big deal. But, okay, the majority of the banks do a 12 or 12:30 Eastern time rule, meaning if they receive your file and your conditions by 12 noon, then it counts as today. So if I'm on 4 days, well, today is actually Thursday, but let's pretend it's Monday. So if I submit my file today on Monday at 11 a.m., then it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I should have my file back on Thursday. Now, if I submit my file at 1:30 p.m., it automatically is considered as submitted on Tuesday, the next day. So I'm not going to get my file back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay. The reason this is so important is that normally what we would do as a processor is we would hold a file for a day or two until we got all of the conditions in. But you can't do that right now while turn times are so long and turn times there's a lot of volume. Okay, so you have to check with your bank or whatever bank you're using, whatever wholesale lender, whatever warehouse line, okay? You have to check with them about what is your same day submission cutoff time. Now, United Wholesale Mortgage is one of the most lenient that I'm aware of, and their cutoff time is 4:30 Eastern time. Okay, so that means that when you submit something by 4:30 Eastern time, it is counted as received today. So here's why this matters. Number 1, we have really long turn times, meaning from the time you turn something in until the time an underwriter is going to touch it, it's double, triple, quadruple what we're normally used to seeing prior to COVID volume. Okay, so number 1. Number 2, I know that as a processor, right, some banks don't even let us submit the file until we have the majority of the conditions. You have to check with your banks because some of them have changed this rule, especially with long turn times. They're letting you, we would normally call it piecemealing, where you can upload a couple of conditions, and if the file gets picked up by the underwriter before that, they'll review it and send it back. But what's happening, it's kind of like Black Friday when you go with your older kids and you let them stand in line while you go do the shopping, but they stand in line and then you bring all your stuff up and then go and pay. What you're going to do when you have the majority of your conditions, okay, you're going to resubmit the file. This is only on conditions, okay? Only on conditions. I'll talk about submissions in just a second. You have to check with the bank and ask them, if I submit conditions and I get another condition and I add it, do I lose my place in the queue or lose my place in line? Okay? Most of the lenders have waived that rule and said no. If you submit it and you add more stuff into it, you will not lose your place in line. However, United Wholesale Mortgage still has really good turn times, so they're an exception to this rule. If you upload conditions at UWM and you upload another condition, you're going to restart your wait time. But they also have some other different rules, like you can't submit your file until you have 90 or 100% of your conditions. So that one's a little bit different. UWM's always a little bit different, okay? So this rule is not even a thing on initial submissions, okay? Once your file is initially submitted, while you are waiting for underwrite, you can add as many files to it as you possibly can until your underwriter picks up the file. So processors, do not hold your files waiting to submit a full file. We can't do that these days right now. You have to submit your file for an initial underwrite with the bare minimum documents and then continue to add while you're waiting in that 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 18-day window for an initial underwrite. You can add things like your title work, your insurance, letters of explanation, verifications of employment, okay? If you're not sure what you should add, come find our Facebook group. Last week I shared a 21-day checklist. It's going to list the things that you should have in a file in order to close a loan in 21 days. Pre-COVID, okay, but it's still the good and the best roadmap. Now, if you have conditions, if your bank does allow you to upload conditions and continue to add without losing your place in line, okay, without losing your place in line, then you want to get that thing resubmitted as soon as possible and then continue to add conditions. Okay, I did this on a file. I was, one of my processors is out unexpectedly. I said, hey, don't worry, I'll jump in tomorrow morning and get a couple of these things straightened out. I'll get the file resubmitted to underwriting. I'll get the clock started. I'll put in what we have. If on the next day that you're back, you can check in and see what else we can add to it. Okay. Now, on initial conditions, on initial submission, it is true. You submit, you keep adding, you keep adding, you keep adding, you keep adding. Okay. You won't lose your place in line. It's on the condition uploads where you might, depending on what bank you're using, you might lose your place in line. And so you need to know. But processors, stop holding your files until you have everything in. Because the perception is from loan officers is that you don't care about turn times. And I'm trying to correct that thought and saying it's not at all. It's not at all that a processor doesn't care about turn times or closing deadlines. They're trying to do a good job and submit good files and not piecemeal, because that's what we've been told for years and years and years. But right now, you almost have to think about piecemealing. Now, what piecemealing means is like when you send a file back and you don't have all the conditions. The reason why lenders don't like that is because it takes so many touches. And contrary to popular belief, when an underwriter gets a file back, they don't just review what you send in. They have to review that nothing else has changed in the file. So it's not like a quick, oh, let me just review these 7 things that you uploaded. They have to make sure that those 7 things haven't changed any material. So that's an accounting term, any material effect of the loan. Meaning, if you send me a bank statement and it has less money than the one we had before, that might change your approval status. It just depends on your transaction, okay? So remember the 12 o'clock noon rule. If you are on, and I get this question a lot when I'm doing boot camp, what if I'm Pacific time? So if you're Pacific time, you need to structure your day properly, and you probably need to be doing your submissions in the afternoons so that they count for the next day anyway. Unless you're some sort of like crazy sauce person who wants to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning and work to make sure your files are submitted by noon Eastern. Okay. If you have any questions, list them below. I hop into YouTube and try and answer questions about once a week or so. Sometimes YouTube doesn't want to post my answers. Maybe it doesn't like my answers. YouTube's been talking to my kids, I bet. I hope you all have a great September. We're halfway through the month. For those of you that are learning with me, I appreciate you. Have a great day.